You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Don't struggle to align your organization's cybersecurity with business risk. Get the only solution that goes beyond reacting to threats with vulnerability and risk monitoring. You need the next evolution of MDR, and only Critical Start delivers it. Critical Start doesn't just monitor and respond to threats. They put you in control by detecting suspicious activities, quickly responding to contain threats, and identifying your most critical assets and protecting them against vulnerabilities and exposures. With continuous visibility, expert guidance, and measurable risk reduction, Critical Start has redefined what it means to manage cyber risk. Demonstrate provable security maturity to your leadership while positioning your program to achieve the greatest risk reduction per dollar spent. Stop fearing risk and start managing it with Critical Start. Visit criticalstart.com and request a demo today. That's criticalstart.com. Google patches another Chrome Zero Day. UK insurance agencies and the NCSC team up to reduce ransom payments. The FCC designates a robocall scam group. Vermont passes strong data privacy laws. A malicious Python package targets macOS users. ESET unpacks eBury malware. Don't answer Jenny's email. Our guest is author Barbara McQuaid, discussing her book Attack from Within: How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. And the White House says, keep your crypto mining away from our missile silos. It's Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is your CyberWire Intel Briefing. Thanks for joining us once again here. It is great to have you with us. Google has released patches for a new Chrome vulnerability, a high-severity out-of-bounds write issue in the V8 JavaScript and WebAssembly engine. This zero-day flaw, reported by an anonymous researcher on May 9th, is the second such vulnerability patched by Google within a week, and the third of 2024. While there is a known exploit in the wild, details about the attacks remain undisclosed. Additionally, a proof-of-concept exploit has been claimed, though its effectiveness is uncertain. 3 major UK insurance associations have collaborated with the National Cybersecurity Centre to issue new guidance aimed at reducing ransom payments following ransomware attacks. This initiative, based on a 2023 NCSC-sponsored research by the Royal United Services Institute, encourages organizations to thoroughly assess the impact of ransomware incidents and consider alternatives before paying ransoms. The guidance, while non-mandatory, seeks to deter the impulse to pay ransoms, which the NCSC's CEO, Felicity Oswald, argues only fuels further criminal activity. Oswald emphasized the ineffectiveness of ransom payments in eliminating future risks and noted that organizations with a Cyber Essentials certificate are significantly less likely to file insurance claims related to cyber incidents. Despite this, the decision to pay a ransom ultimately remains with the victim organization. The FCC has issued an alert about a robocall scam group named Royal Tiger, marking it as the first Consumer Communications Information Services Threat, CSIST. This designation aims to enhance awareness among law enforcement and industry stakeholders to combat scams. Led by Prince Jawaharlal Anand, also known as Frank Murphy, and Kaushal Bhavsar, operate from multiple countries and has been involved in illegal robocall operations impersonating banks, government bodies, and utilities. The group's entities, including several voice-over IP companies in the U.S. and abroad, have been linked to substantial consumer fraud and financial losses. The FCC, along with the FTC, has taken actions including cease and desist orders to halt their illicit activities and protect consumer trust in communication services. Vermont's legislature has passed one of the strongest comprehensive data privacy laws in the U.S., featuring a unique provision that allows individuals to sue companies directly for privacy violations. This private right of action is limited to large data brokers and will need reauthorization after 2 years. The law includes stringent requirements on data minimization and bans the sale of sensitive consumer data. This move aligns with recent efforts in other states like Maryland and ongoing attempts to create a federal privacy law. Vermont's law also addresses the use of geolocation data and establishes robust civil rights protections to prevent discrimination. This legislation is seen as a significant step in empowering consumers against data abuses by large tech companies. A malicious Python package named Requests Darwin Lite on PyPy, mimicking the popular Requests library, targeted macOS devices using the Sliver C2 framework, a tool for gaining access to corporate networks. Discovered by Phylum, the attack included multiple obfuscation steps such as steganography within a PNG image to covertly install Sliver. The package has since been removed from PyPy following Phylum's report. Sliver is known for its post-exploitation capabilities and has become a preferred tool for cybercriminals due to its effectiveness in simulating adversary actions and evading detection compared to other frameworks like Cobalt Strike. This recent incident underscores the ongoing rise in cybercriminal adoption of Sliver for targeting various platforms, including macOS. Meanwhile, Apple has extended security updates to older iPhones and iPads, addressing a zero-day vulnerability initially patched in March for newer devices. This vulnerability, found in the iOS kernel's RT kit, could allow attackers to bypass kernel memory protections. Although the exploiters of this flaw and the specific nature of the attacks remain undisclosed, such iOS 0 days are often used in targeted state-sponsored spyware attacks. Devices including the iPhone 8, iPhone 10, and various iPad models have received the patches. Users of the devices are strongly encouraged to update immediately to safeguard against potential exploits. Researchers from ESET reveal that eBury malware, initially exposed a decade ago, continues to be a significant threat, now compromising around 400,000 servers globally. This malware primarily targets Linux systems and has been utilized by cybercriminals for financial gain, including credit card and cryptocurrency theft. Despite the arrest of one perpetrator, eBury has evolved with new propagation methods and obfuscation techniques, making it harder to detect. It leverages compromised servers within data centers to intercept and steal credentials, particularly targeting Bitcoin and Ethereum nodes. The recent developments in eBury's capabilities suggest an increasing sophistication in cyber attacks, underscoring the need for continued vigilance and advanced security measures. Security experts from Proofpoint have observed a large-scale email campaign distributing the Lockbit 3.0 ransomware, also known as Lockbit Black, directly via emails purportedly from Jenny Green. Facilitated by the Forpix botnet, the campaign sends out millions of emails daily with a subject line, "Your document." Each email contains a zip file that, when executed, downloads and activates the ransomware on the user's system. This kind of ransomware distribution via email at such a volume is unusual and has not been observed since before 2020. The 4PX botnet, known for delivering malware in high-volume email campaigns, has been active despite law enforcement efforts. Users are advised to be cautious of emails from Jenny Green, and to avoid opening unexpected attachments. Coming up after the break, my Caveat co-host Ben Yellen speaks with our guest Barbara McQuaid. We're discussing her book, Attack from Within: How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. Every day, your IAM tech debt grows. Your multi-generational services struggle to work together. Building an identity fabric can fix this. It makes all your identity tooling stronger and allows you to connect any app to any service you want to use, with zero coding, zero maintenance, and zero app downtime. Strata's identity orchestration platform separates the identity logic from your applications, so you can optimize existing IAM tools and manage them in a single control plane. Now, every vendor, standard, and architecture work together. In short, building your identity fabric means you can secure your non-standard apps, keep your complex access policies, retire outdated IDPs, and modernize in record time. So build your fabric with Strata Identity and get rid of tech debt for good. Visit strata.io/cyberwire, share your identity priorities, and receive a pair of AirPods Pro. Offer valid for organizations over 5,000 employees. Connect today at strata.io/cyberwire. The IT world used to be simpler. You only had to secure and manage environments that you controlled. Then came new technologies and new ways to work. Now, employees, apps, and networks are everywhere. This means poor visibility, security gaps, and added risk. That's why Cloudflare created the first-ever connectivity cloud. Visit cloudflare.com to protect your business everywhere you do business. Ben Yellen from the University of Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security is my co-host on the Caveat podcast. He recently spoke with Barbara McQuaid, author of the book Attack from Within: How Disinformation is Sabotaging America.
So I want to start very high level. You have recently written and published a book called Attack from Within: How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. So if you could just give us a high level overview of the genesis for this book, why you decided to write it, what was the impetus, what was the galvanizing event?
Although I'm a professor at Michigan Law School now, I started my career and spent most of my career working as a prosecutor in national security. And during the time I was working as a national security prosecutor, I saw the threat to national security evolve from Al-Qaeda to ISIS to cyber intrusions to Russia. And now that I teach law, I teach a course in national security, and a growing area has been disinformation. It started with Russian disinformation. I have my students read Robert Mueller's report on Russia's interference in the 2016 election. And it's really evolved, in my view, from an external threat to an internal threat. I think now we see a really significant threat to our national security coming from American sources, hence the name of the book, Attack from Within. And I think that there are people in this country who don't care about truth so much as advancing their own political agenda, personal agenda, or profit agenda.
So let's address the elephant in the room here, which is that what you identify as misinformation or disinformation, others will identify as, maybe as Kellyanne Conway once said, alternative facts. And efforts such as yours to call out disinformation are met with the likes of people like Elon Musk, who say that your real goal is censorship. And so I just want off the bat to give you a chance to respond to people who I think would be making that argument.
Yeah, I'm so glad to get this question, because I think that our country cherishes First Amendment freedoms, as do I. And it's something that is highly regarded on the left and the right. Without First Amendment free speech, we lose our ability to speak out against our government. And so I cherish our First Amendment rights of free speech. But I think that there are people who use the C word, censorship, in an effort to silence all critics of anything that anybody says, and is carte blanche to be able to say anything they want to say. Of course, the First Amendment has some limitations on it, like all fundamental rights. And so the Supreme Court has held that rights of free speech, like other fundamental rights, may be limited when the limitation is narrowly tailored to achieve a compelling governmental interest. And so it's for that reason that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, because you might be creating chaos or havoc or danger to other people. It is a crime to threaten to kill somebody and to communicate a threat in interstate commerce. It is a threat to engage in a conspiracy with somebody, even though it is communicated by speech. It is a crime to commit fraud, even though your fraud is committed by speech. So those who claim that the First Amendment is absolute either don't know better, or they do know better and they're lying. So this idea of, who's the truth police anyway? What is truth? There's no such thing as truth. You're playing a very dangerous game, because although we can all have our own opinions and we can have our views on, eternal truths like the meaning of life and other things, there are such things as facts. I spent my career as a prosecutor in court, where there are facts and you have to use evidence to support your factual assertions. This idea that truth is unknowable and there are no facts is something that is used in Russia, in Putin's Russia, the idea that there are no facts. Truth is for suckers. Truth is non-existent. Everything is political spin. Everything is PR. And if you seek truth, then you're naive. And instead, what you should focus on is, maximizing your profit and disengage from politics, because everybody's corrupt anyway. I think there is such a thing as truth. I think there are such things as facts. And I think that we should not be duped into thinking that any effort to focus on truth is itself an act of censorship.
What strikes me is that efforts at disinformation have been extremely successful. I mean, you look at just polling, how many people have these false beliefs. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about effective disinformation tactics. What you sort of think of the person you picture as the greatest purveyor of disinformation. I have mine. I suspect many of our listeners and our guests might share that person. But what are those techniques that you recognize that you talk about in your book?
Yeah, so a lot of these tactics are ones that have been around for decades. Although the means for communicating them has changed with social media, I think many of the same techniques are still in use. Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini used these techniques. One of them is this idea of declinism, that things are awful in society. We are a country in decline. Our unemployment is down. Wages are up. There's a lot of, really good things going on in the country, but instead the narrative is again and again and again how awful things are. Because then if things are awful, one, we can scapegoat and blame other people for that and cast someone as the enemy that we need to work against and hate. So these are really the same techniques we've seen throughout history being used again.
I guess the difference, we've seen these techniques throughout history. The difference now is, of course, the internet, which brings us to this podcast, which is about law and policy of cybersecurity, privacy, surveillance, that sort of thing. So can you talk about the role the internet has played in fostering disinformation, how it's kind of changed the game, even though the techniques are the same?
Yes, I think the greatest example of this comes from Robert Mueller's report, which I assigned to my students, about the Internet Research Agency's work to spread disinformation using social media, Facebook, Twitter, now X, YouTube. And it was achieved by creating false personas online, creating accounts with names that portrayed themselves as members of various affinity groups in the United States. And the goal was to sow division among these groups, to destabilize American society, to get us fighting with each other and ignoring Russia on the world stage so they could do what they wanted to do, invade Ukraine, annex Crimea, destabilize NATO. And so, they would portray themselves as, for example, there was an account called Blacktivist. many months before the election, Blacktivist cultivated a lot of followers of African Americans who thought that Blacktivist was one of them. There was another group called United Muslims of America. There was a group called Tennessee GOP. There was one called Heart of Texas. And they all portrayed themselves as being grassroots Americans with a particular affinity or identity. And then they would do things to stoke divisions, to say outrageous things, to get people looking at that group and say, look at how outrageous those people are. They say all of these horrible things. Well, it's because they weren't those people at all. They were some, Russian operative in a hoodie somewhere in a boiler room in Moscow. Or what Blacktivist wrote just before the 2016 election, again, followers thinking that this was their Black political activists, saying things like, Hillary Clinton has never done anything for our community. We should send her a message that we should not be taken for granted by not showing up at the polls for her. We should stay home on election day and send an important message. So we'll never know how many people heeded that call, but if even only a few did in a swing state that was decided by a narrow margin, you could see that it could have tremendous influence on the outcome of the election. And so in this way, we now have technology that can spread messages instantly to millions of people and can do so anonymously.
I'm always amazed at the precision of the Internet Research Agency. I mean, I lived in Baltimore City at the time. We had gone through the Freddie Gray unrest, and the memes that you saw that were so specific to the circumstances that through the Mueller report, we realized were the result of Russian disinformation. It was really striking to me. What would you like to see happen to help break the spell of disinformation?
Yeah, I think one thing we need to do is to get our arms around media literacy. So the things we've been talking about so far are things on the supply side of how we might regulate social media to prevent so much disinformation from reaching us. But I think on the demand side, there are some things we can do to make us more resilient when we receive disinformation. And one is this idea of media literacy. In Finland, they have introduced media literacy into their schools because in light of their proximity to Russia, they have been bombarded with disinformation from Russia for decades, trying to reduce the power of NATO and reclaim some of their former Soviet satellite countries. And so media literacy in the schools, teaching students things like there may be fake news out there. It may be that someone creates a false newspaper that looks like a real one, but it's called something like, in Detroit, we have the Detroit News and the Detroit Free Press. They create something called the Detroit Tribune, right? And it doesn't even exist, but it looks pretty good. And then it pushes stuff out there on social media that says the Detroit Tribune is reporting X, Y, and Z. Well, maybe you do a little research to find out if the Detroit Tribune is a real thing before you take what they report at face value, learning that the headlines don't always reflect accurately what is in the story of a newspaper, looking for a second source before you assume some fact to be true. So, teach people these things so that they can spot them. And, we could do that in our schools, but we could also do it for adults through civic organizations and faith communities. There's a lot of great lifelong learning programs out there. I think there is sometimes this temptation when there are people out there stoking division on social media, trolls who will argue with you. And it turns out they're just bots who are picking a fight with you and, berating you because you are of your gender, your race, your whatever. And they're just there to stoke division. And so learning to not take the bait when we see these things, to not argue with bots, because that is what ramps up the heat in all of these exchanges. And so sometimes we jump to conclusions because we read something on social media and we believe it to be true, when in fact, if we look for the evidence there, it's really missing. And so I think that building that resilience requires our own media literacy, but our own sort of tolerance and respect for those who might share different views politically.
I think that's a very positive message to end on, and I agree that it's incumbent upon all of us. We're all susceptible to it. I know both you and I are users of X, formerly Twitter, and spending an hour on there, I think we break our own rules frequently. So I appreciate that as a message. Thank you, Professor Barbara McQuaid. The book is Attack from Within, How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ben. Great to be here.
That's author Barbara McQuaid. The book is titled Attack from Within, how disinformation is sabotaging America. Are lengthy security reviews pulling attention away from your security program? With the largest network of trust centers, Vanta can help you streamline security reviews to win customer trust, save time, and close deals fast. Proactively demonstrate security by showcasing key resources like your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 and provide real-time evidence for passing controls. And when a security questionnaire is required, Vanta takes the first pass for you. Visit vanta.com/cyber to take a self-serve tour. That's vanta.com/cyber. And finally, President Joe Biden has officially called game over for a Chinese-owned crypto mining data center in Cheyenne, Wyoming, located suspiciously close to a nuclear missile base. Via executive order, Biden told Mine One, the operators of the data center, to pack up their crypto gear and put the facility on the market within 120 days. Just a stone's throw from Francis E. Warren Air Force Base, home to America's Minuteman III nuclear missiles, the center's location raised more than a few eyebrows and national security concerns. Apparently, running a crypto mining operation near high-stakes military hardware is a big no-no. Microsoft, playing the neighborhood watch, flagged the operation to the government, leading to an investigation and the eventual shutdown order. Mine One hasn't chimed in yet, but the message from the White House is clear: close shop and move your digital digging elsewhere. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and a review in your podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to cyberwire@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K CyberWire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your teams smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music and sound design by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karpf. Simone Petrella is our president, Peter Kilpie is our publisher, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Hey all, Rick here. At N2K CyberWire, we're dedicated to continuously improving the quality of the news and commentary on our network. That's why we're inviting you to participate in our 2024 audience survey. It only takes a few minutes, and your feedback is invaluable. Plus, you'll have the chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card as a thank you for your time. Head on over to cyberwire.com/survey. That's cyberwire.com/survey to share your feedback now.
And now a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the leader in operationalizing cybercrime analytics. Traditional threat intelligence is a thing of the past. Cyber criminals are stealing vast amounts of credentials, session cookies, and financial data every day, and it's hard to keep up. SpyCloud is the trusted partner businesses turn to fully understand their darknet exposure risk and neutralize threats before it's too late. SpyCloud alerts your organization as soon as an employee or customer's data appears on the darknet, so you can act faster than bad actors to prevent cyber attacks like ransomware, session hijacking, account takeover, and online fraud. With insights from the industry's largest repository of recaptured data, protect the digital identities and systems most important to your business. Get your free corporate darknet exposure report at spycloud.com/cyberwire and see what information criminals have in their hands today. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire.